The Sacramento Kings regular season schedule is out. We will break down this schedule, go over some of the biggest notes from this schedule, look at marquee games. Plus, we expect this to be a big year for Davion Mitchell. What does that look like? What does Davion Mitchell need to do to take that next step in his career? It's all right here on the Locked On Kings podcast.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all regular season and all offseason. Today's episode is brought to you by Bet Online. They have you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online, where the game starts. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports reporter and producer at ABC 10 News, and we now know we are 2 months and 2 days away from the start of the Sacramento Kings regular season, October 19th against the Portland Trail Blazers inside the Golden One Center. That is not just the home opener for the Kings, that is the season opener for the Kings. The good news is the Kings opened up last season against the Portland Trail Blazers. That was on the road. They beat Portland in that game. The better news is that in the Sacramento era, the Sacramento Kings are 24-13 in home openers. So we've talked a lot about, and this is going to be a consistent theme as we go through this schedule, this strong start, the Kings getting off to a good start, getting wins early, kind of jumping on this schedule early. That's going to be a really important part of the success of the Kings this season. So the fact that they will open up on their home floor, the first time in a couple of years, maybe 3 years, I think that has happened, to do it against a team that is very beatable. And the fact that the Kings do have a lot of success historically in home openers, that's a big deal for Sacramento getting off to a strong start. Of course, one game is just one game, so you can't expect the Kings to go 1-0 and all of a sudden, hey, maybe they're NBA championship, NBA finals bound or anything like that. Again, they started at 1-0 last season, but still, to start your season on your home floor, it's a blessing in a lot of ways. And the good news is it's not just one game that the Kings are starting at home. 4 out of the first 5 games for Sacramento are at home. When you look at this schedule and run through it, you have the Portland Trail Blazers on the 19th, the Los Angeles Clippers on Saturday the 22nd, the Golden State Warriors the very next night in Golden State on the 23rd. That's rough. 3 days off. The Memphis Grizzlies at home on the 27th, and then the Miami Heat at home on the 29th. So 4 out of the first 5 games are at home. The bad news is really good teams that the Kings are taking on during that 5-game stretch. The Portland Trail Blazers are going to be the quote-unquote easiest game of that stretch, and we still don't really know what Portland's going to look like. But the LA Clippers, expect them to be very good. The Golden State Warriors, that are defending champions, you're taking them on the road on the second night of a back-to-back. Memphis Grizzlies, really good team last year. I expect them to be good this year. Miami Heat, really, really good team in the Eastern Conference. So the Kings are going to be put to the test right away. They need to get off to a strong start. And speaking of the Golden State Warriors, the Kings will face the Warriors 3 times in their first 12 games. 3 out of the first 12 games, literally 25% of the first 12 games of the season will be against the Golden State Warriors. 2 of those 3 games will be in Golden State on the 23rd of October, and on the, let's see, where is it? The 7th of November. And then the final one will be on the 13th of November, that game in Sacramento. And I've seen a lot of people talk about this, and a lot of people get concerned about this because, look, the Golden State Warriors, defending champions, they're going to be good again this year by all expectation. I expect them to make another deep NBA Finals run this season. You never want to face the Golden State Warriors if you want to be a winning basketball team. It's hard, but if you are going to face the Golden State Warriors, facing them 3 times early, believe it or not, is actually better than facing them 3 times in the middle or latter parts of the season. This is why the start of the season is so important. Is by the time you reach that late December, mainly early January time, that's where the really, really good teams, they've started to hit their midseason stride. They're really in form, and you get into like the February, March months where they're starting to gear up for the playoffs themselves. Maybe you would want to catch them in April if they've already clinched and they're resting their guys at the very end of the season. But we've seen historically that doesn't really matter for the Kings because typically by the time they get to those April games, they're already out of it themselves. So I think getting the Golden State Warriors 3 times in the first 12 games is actually a positive for the Sacramento Kings, all things considered. Again, no game against the Golden State Warriors is going to be easy, but if you can catch them early while they're still getting into regular season shape, maybe they're implementing new things, implementing new players, trying to figure stuff out. They and the Boston Celtics played more than any other team last season. Of course, they've had the offseason to rest, so it really shouldn't be a fatigue question, but still, it's not the easiest argument to make. It might not end up being that big of a deal. Hopefully the Kings don't go 0-3 during that stretch. They definitely should go 1-2, at least getting that home game. They should have a chance at getting 2 out of the 3. I don't think they're going to go 3-0 by any means against the Warriors during that stretch, but catching them early, catching good teams early, to me is a positive. You have a chance to beat the Los Angeles Clippers in the second game of the season at home. Who knows what that team is going to look like? They have not played together in a long time. Maybe you can catch them while they're gearing up. The Miami Heat, the very next Saturday night. Like, what does that team look like? Maybe they're gearing up. I think catching teams earlier on in the season, really good teams earlier on, versus catching them later on in the season when they've gotten their groove and guys have settled into their roles, they've established their systems, and they're looking to start gearing themselves up for a deep playoff run and for a lot of these teams an NBA Finals run. I think that is a big deal for the Kings. A lot of home games early on in the season. And we've talked about the Kings have to be better at defending their home floor. They cannot, and I repeat, cannot be as abysmal at home as they've been over the last couple of seasons. If Sacramento is going to have any chance at making the playoffs, they need to protect their home floor. Now, I don't think the Kings are a terrible road team. It's much more difficult to win on the road than it is at home for an up-and-coming team. But you need to defend your home floor. If team after team after team is going to come inside the Golden One Center and absolutely have their way with the Kings, Sacramento has little to no chance. Truthfully, they need to defend their home floor. And the fact that you get 4 out of your first 5 games at home, you can set the tone. Can you go 3-2 during that stretch? Find 3 wins out of those first 5 games. Portland, let's say Clippers, Memphis. Can you get 3 out of those 5 games? Maybe you can shock the Warriors on the road. Maybe you get Portland, Clippers, Warriors. Find 3 wins in those first 5 games. Take advantage of that home schedule. And speaking at home, the longest home stand for the Sacramento Kings is 6 games from December 19th to December 30th. Those games are the Chicago Bulls, Los Angeles Lakers, Washington Wizards, Denver Nuggets again the very next night, and then the Utah Jazz. A lot of winnable games there as well, especially at home. And I think that's the first time, if I'm not mistaken, that we will see LeBron. Yes, it is. First time we'll see LeBron James and the Lakers here inside the Golden One Center. The other time the Kings face the Lakers is in January on Saturday the 7th. So you have one Wednesday night game against the Lakers, one Saturday night game against the Lakers. The good news is for all you weekend warriors out there, the Sacramento Kings have a lot of weekend home games, 19, I believe, and that includes Friday nights, 19 weekend home games, which is really, really good. Other important notes, their longest road trip, 7 games from January 26th through February 8th, and this is a pretty tough road trip. Starts with the Minnesota Timberwolves. Again, you get the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Kings play the same team back-to-back, I think 3 separate times. You have the Minnesota Timberwolves back-to-back, the Denver Nuggets back-to-back, Houston Rockets back-to-back, but you have the Minnesota Timberwolves twice, San Antonio Spurs, Indiana Pacers, New Orleans Pelicans, Houston Rockets, and Houston Rockets. So you actually play Houston back-to-back twice. It's pretty crazy. So that's a 7-game road trip right there. That's actually not the toughest road trip. They have a more difficult 6-game road trip in December. Milwaukee, Cleveland, New York, Philadelphia, Toronto, and Detroit. The Philadelphia and Toronto are on back-to-back nights. Oof. Just find a way to tread water. If you can find a way to be at 500 or 1 game under 500 during those tough road trips, that's a win for the Sacramento Kings in a lot of ways, as long as you're handling your business at home. Winnable games on the road, but those are the longest road trips that the Sacramento Kings have to deal with. One national TV game for the Kings, that's against the Houston Rockets on Wednesday, January 11th. That game will be on ESPN, so we'll see Jabari Smith Jr. versus Keegan Murray on national TV. I guess that's why they picked that game, but that's a win over the last couple of seasons. The Kings have had 0 national TV games. Now they do have 4 other NBA TV games, which I guess you could consider national TV. I don't personally. I look at TNT and ESPN as the national TV games, not NBA TV. But if you want to include NBA TV, then the Kings have 5. Yay. Big game. This should have been a national TV game. Tyrese Halliburton and the Indiana Pacers come to Sacramento to end November on November 30th, a Wednesday night game. We will see Tyrese Halliburton back in Sacramento. And I want to ask you, what do you think that reception is going to be like? I think it's going to be like a hero returning home. I know how much Tyrese was loved here in Sacramento. I think he's going to get a lot of love when he comes back to Sac. And he might make Kings fans hurt a little bit in that game. He might put up some big numbers. I will say, I expect the Sacramento Kings to win that game. I don't expect the Indiana Pacers to be good. On your home floor, even with the Tyrese Halliburton reunion, does not matter. Tyrese could have a phenomenal game. It does not matter. The Kings need to win that game. They absolutely need to win that game against the Pacers on the 30th, but I expect Tyrese to be welcomed home like a hero. And then other than that, it's a pretty average standard schedule. If you're looking at, again, 15 back-to-backs, it's pretty league average from what I'm understanding. Looking at other schedules, I've seen some with 14, some with 16. The Kings are at 15, as are a lot of teams. Nothing too crazy there. There is not really, I mean, a few 3 games in 4 nights, like in December, 2 games against Denver at home, the night off, and then a game against the Utah Jazz. You have another 3 or 4 games, or rather 3 games and 4 nights at home in March against Phoenix, Utah, and Minnesota, with only a 1-day break after the Utah game. So it's a condensed NBA schedule. The games are a lot more spaced out early on in the schedule in like October compared to once they're in regular season form. And then the All-Star break will be in February, from February 15th through the 22nd. No games at that point. So if you want to look over this schedule, I posted it on my social media account. You can find it anywhere. Just look it up online and tell me about what games you're most excited about, what games you're worried about, stretches you're worried about, anything like that. Please let me know, and please do that. And we're excited to now know how the Kings are going to put these games together. And actually, joining me on tomorrow's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast, I'm going to be joined by Kenny Caraway from ESPN 1320's D-Lo and KC. He is going to join me. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into the schedule. We're going to look at specific matchups. We're going to talk about having the Golden State Warriors 3 times early on, go a little bit deeper into trends that we're seeing in the schedule itself, areas that we are concerned about for the Kings, areas where we think the Kings are really going to have to grit down and just kind of survive, and other areas where the Kings have to make up some ground. We're going to really look at the first 2 months, October and November, really look at these games and find out where the Kings can steal some wins. Because also during November, they have like the Brooklyn Nets at home. During November, they have the Phoenix Suns at home. So there are going to be some difficult games early on that Sacramento may need to, or be in a position to, steal a win or two and take advantage of. Kenny and I will go over that on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Kings. But still to come on today's episode, Davion Mitchell. A lot of people are calling this a make or break year for Davion. I don't think that's fair. He's just in his 2nd season, but this is a really good get to know you year for Davion. I'll explain what I mean about that after this quick break and this public service announcement from the NHTSA. You're hanging out with some friends and putting back a few drinks. A few becomes a few too many. And as the evening comes to an end and people start to head out, you think of calling for a ride. Nah, you live nearby. You can make it home okay. It's no big deal. What are the odds that you get pulled over anyway? And even so, what's the worst that can happen? Your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you lose your job, you total your car, you kill someone. Everyone knows about the risks of driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel when under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're going to drive after a few drinks, think again, play it safe, and plan ahead to get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. If you want to call this a make or break year for Davion Mitchell, let's talk about it. Because to me, I don't think that's fair. Davion doesn't have to be the best version of himself in just his 2nd year in the league. However, I do expect Davion Mitchell to be a better version of himself than what we saw last year. And what we're going to learn, I think, very early in this season is which parts of Davion Mitchell last year were circumstantial, meaning Davion at the end of the season putting up all those numbers, playing almost 40 minutes a game and taking over a primary scoring role for the Sacramento Kings. He kind of had to do that with De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis out, got to showcase his offense a little more. Showed me some things that I didn't know really his game had at the NBA level. Can he still incorporate that this season, or does he need to be the 38 to 40 minutes per game primary ball handler guy in order to have that skill set? Those are just areas of his game that we hopefully will see translate. But really, when you look at what Davion Mitchell's role is going to be, or what we believe his role is going to be for the Sacramento Kings, which is a six-man coming off the bench. If Davion truly wants to be a six-man for this team, more of a six-man than, say, a Malik Monk, who we believe will be coming off the bench, or at least I believe will be coming off the bench, as I believe Kevin Huerter will be starting at the 2. What does Davion Mitchell have to be sixth man? What does he have to do consistently? Well, he has to mainly fit with De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis. The belief is that Davion is going to play mid-20s in minutes per game, 25, 26, 27 minutes per game. That's what I expect. And if you're having De'Aaron Fox play 35, 36, 37 minutes per game that he needs to be playing, maybe not that high, maybe in the mid-30s, mid 35, 36, let's say that. If that's what you need from De'Aaron Fox, or you're expecting out of De'Aaron Fox, that means that Davion's role is not going to be fill-in point guard every time De'Aaron gets a breather. I expect him to be able to handle those responsibilities, and he will handle those responsibilities in the 8 to 10 minutes that De'Aaron rests during a game. That's going to be for Davion to take over that primary point guard role. But Davion needs to fit with De'Aaron. Davion needs to fit with Domantas Sabonis. And the best way for him to do that is to improve his outside shot. Now, Davion's three-point numbers in the low 30s last year, I don't think is a total indication of his game. I think he is a better three-point shooter than he showed last season. But if you are going to be a consistent enough threat to be on the floor with De'Aaron Fox, as much as we expect Davion to be on the floor with Fox, enough to be an advantage defensively for the Kings. Like if De'Aaron can buy in defensively and play alongside of Davion Mitchell in the backcourt, the Kings have something there. I think both De'Aaron and Davion can be pesky on-ball defenders that can frustrate some backcourts if they give that effort. We know Davion's going to give that effort. But if Davion doesn't fit offensively while being out there as a defensive boost for the Kings, Sacramento might have struggles, especially when spacing is oh so important for this team and the success of De'Aaron Fox, the success of Domantas Sabonis. Now, I trust Davion to be able to space the floor, but will he hit enough threes consistently for the Sacramento Kings to be able to take advantage of him being out there? And what I mean by that is defenses either have to respect Davion by not leaving him on the perimeter, or they are punished when they leave Davion to double team De'Aaron or double team Sabonis or double team maybe Keegan Murray when he's attacking the basket or something like that. Davion needs to be able to hit those threes consistently to earn that respect. And that also leads to a major question of starting lineup wise. I don't believe Davion is going to be a starter, but closing lineup, and closing lineups are what's important for not just a lot of players, but a lot of teams. Are you on the floor when it matters most at the end of the game during crunch time? I think Davion Mitchell has all the capability in the world of being a closer for Sacramento, especially when he's out there for defense. But if he's going to be out there in the closing lineups, he's going to be out there with Fox. He's going to be out there with Sabonis. And offensively, he needs to space the floor. So I don't call this a make or break year for Davion by any means. Don't think that's fair in just his second season. I do call this a get to know you year for Davion, because we got an idea of the player that he was this rookie season, saw great things, saw him struggle at times, which to be expected. What is real and what is the anomaly? And what areas of his game are we going to see, and do we need to see significant improvement over the offseason? Three-point shot is a big one. Able to consistently have that defensive intensity throughout an 82-game season. Now, to be honest, Davion was definitely one of the best defenders on this Kings team last year. The Kings were dreadful defensively. It wasn't Davion Mitchell's fault. But Davion was not able to keep up his defensive intensity that we saw early on in the season. We saw at different points during the season. There were nights that, like everybody else, Davion took some plays off defensively or wasn't as impactful defensively as the Kings would have wanted him to be. Of course, again, being a good individual defender on a tragically bad defensive team, your efforts are going to be brushed under the rug a little bit or not going to shine through as much as maybe they should have for him. But can Davion be that impactful defender all season long? Can he pace himself and know when to go and when to hold back? And that's a big question with Davion because he's such a workhorse. He's such a workaholic, such a gym rat that he works his ass off. He's been working his ass off every day this offseason. And I've heard that and been told that by multiple different sources. Here in Sacramento, he's been here in the practice facility in the Golden One Center, working his ass off daily. I've been told that they've been bringing people in from the Stockton Kings. They've been bringing potential Stockton Kings players in to work with Davion. They've been bringing, of course, main roster Kings players. Coaching staff have been in here working with Davion to give Davion people to work with and give him game action because that is the kind of workhorse that he is. So I expect Davion to be in great shape. I expect Davion to have put in the work. Like, that's a no-brainer for me. And I'm not saying that we gloss over that or don't praise him for that because his work ethic deserves that recognition. But with all that work, do we see significant, skillful results? A skillful, better three-point shot. The ability to run the offense the same way De'Aaron Fox runs it when Fox is out of the game. If Davion Mitchell is going to be the sixth man of the year, he's for the Kings and hopefully in the NBA, he's going to have to run that offense to near perfection when Fox is out as best as he possibly can, meaning playing fast, playing in transition. And Davion's spoken about that before. That's the way he likes to play. In the half court, being the floor general, and then being able to hit outside shots, space the floor, score when the Kings need it, but ultimately offensively fill in and fit with Fox and Sabonis when he's out there with the two of them. I definitely think he's capable of it. We need to see it. We need to see it. What do you need to see or want to see from Davion? What do you expect to see from Davion? Do you think a six-man role is okay for him or maybe seventh or eighth man? What do you expect from Davion this year? Let me know. At MattGeorgeSack on Twitter. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. Leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. Now that we know what the Sacramento Kings schedule is, we can now have fun betting on future Kings bets, prop bets, things like that. And whatever Kings bets you're going to lay down, betonline.net is the best, fastest, and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. You can find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games, 5 reviews, and news of every single league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, even golf. They have it all going on right now. And like I said, fun prop bets and future bets for you. You don't have to wait to the start of the regular season or NBA preseason to start betting and using that Kings and NBA knowledge to your advantage. You have over-unders on win totals. Hey, the Kings, what was that? 33 or 34 was their win total. You now have a schedule. Go through and find me 35 wins. If you find 35 wins, which I think we can all find 35 wins for this team this year, slap some money down on that and win some money on Bet Online. They continue to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information. Head to Bet Online today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening right now at Bet Online, where the game starts. So print out those Sacramento Kings schedules, put them on your fridge, frame them, put them above your computer, and now we have to wait. At least we know. Does that make it better? Does that make you more impatient? Makes me more impatient, if I'm being honest with you. But at least we know who they're going to be playing, and we can really start to dissect and break down these games and do what all of us sick, addicted Kings fans do, which is look at every single game and try and predict where the Kings are going to be at that point in time, if that game is winnable or not, if the Kings will steal a win here, if they'll drop a winnable game here. We're going to lose our minds doing that over the next 2 months, and honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. And remember, tomorrow's Locked On Kings podcast, yeah, it's going to be the first time in a while I've done back-to-back days of Locked On Kings podcasts. Kenny Caraway, the KC and D'Lo and KC, he joins me from ESPN 1320 right here on Locked On Kings. We're going to have fun breaking down this Kings schedule, really dive deep, and I know Kenny's going to have some takes, going to have some thoughts on some specific matchups on the Golden State Warriors 3 times at the beginning. We're going to talk a lot about the Kings defending their home floor. more. I can't wait for that conversation. Hope you will join me for that. Thank you for joining me for this episode and for all the support that you show here on the Locked On Kings podcast, even during this time, the driest, longest time of the NBA offseason. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for the support. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode. Until then, my name is Matt George. You have been listening to Locked On Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.